Marcus stood on the steps of a townhouse that cost more than he would earn in 3 lifetimes. The brass knocker gleamed under the streetlight. Upper East Side, stone facade, window boxes with flowers he couldn't name. He checked the email one more time on his phone, the screen brightness harsh against the October darkness. Private dinner meeting to discuss your future at Whitmore Media. The address wasn't a restaurant. The door opened before his knuckles touched brass. A woman in her 50s materialized, elegant in the way money whispers instead of shouts. Pearl earrings, silk blouse, eyes that perform surgery without anesthetic. "You must be Serena's guest." Marcus's confusion must have shown. "I'm Margaret Whitmore. Please come in." The name landed like a punch, not Margaret. The email had said Victoria. His CEO was Victoria Whitmore, not Serena. But the woman was already stepping aside, one manicured hand gesturing toward marble floors that stretched into shadows. Every instinct Marcus possessed screamed retreat. Get back in the car. Drive home to Noah. Forget this ever happened. But his feet carried him forward across a threshold that separated his world from theirs with the finality of a border crossing. The foyer swallowed him, larger than his entire apartment. Oil paintings and gold frames lined walls the color of old money. Fresh orchids erupted from a vase on a table that probably had a pedigree. A chandelier dripped crystal overhead, each facet catching light and throwing it back like accusations. This way, Margaret Whitmore walked with the confidence of someone who had never questioned her right to any space she occupied. Her heels clicked against marble, then hardened wood, then onto Persian rugs that muffled sound the way wealth muffled consequences. The dining room opened before them. Marcus stopped. The table stretched long enough to seat 12, but only 4 places had been set. China so delicate it looked like it might shatter under the weight of a harsh word. Crystal stemware catching candlelight. Silverware arranged with the precision of surgical instruments. At the head of the table sat a man whose photograph Marcus had seen in Forbes. Harrison Whitmore, silver hair swept back from a face that had launched 100 business deals. Eyes that assessed Marcus the way one might evaluate a questionable investment. Beside him, in a cocktail dress, instead of the business suits Marcus had only glimpsed from across the office, stood Victoria Whitmore. She looked younger out of her CEO armor. Smaller, her hands twisted together at her waist, knuckles pale. "I'm sorry," Marcus heard himself say. "I think there's been a mistake." Victoria crossed to him before anyone could answer, her fingers wrapped around his wrist. Cold, trembling. She turned to face her parents. "Mom, Dad, this is Marcus, my boyfriend." The words detonated in the silence. Margaret's champagne flute halted halfway to her lips. Harrison's expression calcified into something harder than the marble Marcus had crossed to get here. "I'm sorry," Harrison Whitmore's voice could have etched glass. "You're what?" "My boyfriend. We've been seeing each other for several months. I wanted you to meet him." Marcus stood frozen. His mind raced through options with the speed of desperation. Deny it, call her out right here, watch whatever this was, collapse into chaos, walk away with enemies he couldn't afford. Or play along, step into a role he never auditioned for, and hope he survived the performance. He looked at Victoria, really looked. Past the composed facade, past the CEO who commanded boardrooms, past the woman who signed his paychecks. Behind all of it, he saw something he recognized. Something he'd felt in a hospital waiting room 3 years ago when doctors told him Sarah was gone and he had a 2-year-old who needed him to hold it together. Desperation. Victoria Whitmore was trapped, and for reasons he didn't yet understand, she had chosen him as her way out. The decision crystallized in the space of a heartbeat. Sometimes a good man isn't the one who does the right thing. Sometimes he's the one who does what's necessary. Marcus extended his hand to Harrison Whitmore. "It's an honor to meet you both, sir. Victoria has told me so much about her family." The lie tasted like copper on his tongue. 3 hours earlier, Marcus's world had looked entirely different. The alarm shrieked at 5:30. He rolled off the pull-out couch in the living room, his back protesting the thin mattress that had become his bed 3 years ago. The bedroom belonged to Noah. Always would. Marcus could sleep anywhere. Morning light filtered weak through windows that faced a brick wall. The apartment was small, 1-bedroom, that he'd surrendered a living room that doubled as his sleeping quarters, a kitchen barely large enough to turn around in. But it was clean. It was warm. It was theirs. Noah's cough drifted through the bedroom door. Wet, rattling. The sound that meant Marcus needed to start the nebulizer before breakfast. He moved through the routine with the efficiency of repetition, measured the medication, assembled the machine, pushed open Noah's door to find his son already awake, sitting up in bed, surrounded by dinosaur stuffed animals and drawings taped to walls. "Morning, buddy. My chest feels scratchy." "I know, we're going to fix that." Noah didn't protest the treatment anymore. 5 years old and already accustomed to the mask over his face, the hiss of medication turning to mist, the 10 minutes of sitting still while chemicals opened airways that wanted to close. Marcus sat beside him on the bed, one hand on his son's small back, feeling each breath. The refrigerator held eggs and bread that would expire tomorrow. Marcus made breakfast while Noah dressed himself backwards, shirt mismatched socks, jeans with a hole in one knee that Marcus kept meaning to patch. The toast burned. Marcus scraped carbon into the sink and served it anyway with strawberry jam that covered most sins. "Mrs. Patterson is coming this morning. Can I show her my new drawing?" "She'd love that." The drawing in question covered half the kitchen table. A dinosaur, possibly a T-Rex, possibly something Noah had invented eating what appeared to be a pizza. Red crayon for sauce, yellow circles for cheese. The dinosaur had been given an expression of intense concentration. Marcus studied it while Noah ate. His son had talent, real talent, the kind that art teachers would notice someday if Marcus could afford the kind of school that had art teachers who cared. The knock came at 7:15. Miss Patterson, 73 years old, had lived next door for 40 years and watched Noah 3 mornings a week for $40 Marcus could barely spare, and she probably needed more. "Look what I made." Noah launched himself at her with the dinosaur drawing. She bent to examine it with the seriousness it deserved. "That is magnificent work. Is this a Tyrannosaurus?" "It's a Tyrannosaurus pizzaverus. I invented it. A new species. Very impressive." Marcus handed her the $40, 2 20s that represented careful choices all week. Cheap coffee instead of the good stuff. Walking instead of Subway when he could. One less meal out stretched into 2. "You're a blessing, Mrs. Patterson." "That boy is the blessing. Now, go, you'll be late." The subway from Bay Ridge to Manhattan took 45 minutes if nothing went wrong. Everything went wrong. Signal problems at Atlantic Avenue. Delays. Packed cars that smelled like coffee and desperation and too many people who'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus used the time to review the Jensen campaign on his phone, the sustainable fashion rebrand he'd pitched 6 months ago. The one that had almost walked when he suggested bold colors instead of earth tones. The one that had delivered a 40% sales increase and coverage in 3 industry publications. The one that had Todd's name on every article and press release. Whitmore Media occupied 15 floors of a Madison Avenue tower. Marcus's cubicle lived on the 7th floor, tucked near the break room, where someone microwaved fish every Friday without fail. 200 employees filled the building with the controlled chaos of deadlines and client demands and creative egos colliding. Marcus kept his head down, did the work, went home. "Morning." Priya appeared at his cubicle wall with coffee from the Good Place 3 blocks over. She was the closest thing he had to a friend here. Senior art director. Brilliant. One of the few people who'd noticed when Todd claimed credit for work he hadn't done. "You're a lifesaver. You look exhausted." Noah had a rough night. The asthma. Always the asthma. She perched on the edge of his desk, lowering her voice. "Did you hear about the Hamilton merger?" "What merger?" "Exactly. Nobody knows anything except that Harrison Whitmore has been in closed-door meetings all week with some finance people. Rumor is it's huge. Above my pay grade. Everything's above your pay grade until Todd steals it." The bitterness in her voice matched what he felt but rarely expressed. Priya had watched him get passed over for senior designer twice, had seen his campaigns reassigned to teams that did half the work for twice the credit. "It is what it is." "It's bullshit, Marcus. You're the best designer in this building, and everyone knows it except the people who matter." Before he could respond, the break room erupted in laughter. Marcus caught a glimpse through the glass, Jake Preston holding court, probably telling the story about the client meeting, where he'd pitched Marcus's idea as his own and walked away with a handshake and a raise. "I should get to work." Don't let them grind you down. Too late for that, but he smiled when he said it. Priya squeezed his shoulder and left him alone with his screen and the mock-ups that needed finishing before the weekend. At noon, Victoria Whitmore walked past his cubicle. Marcus had seen her exactly 4 times in 3 years, always at a distance, always surrounded by executives or assistants, or people whose job was to make sure people like Marcus never got close enough to matter. She was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful, polished, precise, untouchable. Today she walked alone, and today she stopped. Marcus Anderson. He stood too quickly. His knee hit the desk. Coffee sloshed. Ms. Whitmore? Yes, I'm Marcus. The Jensen campaign, that was your concept. Not a question, a statement. Yes, ma'am. The color story was unexpected. Most designers would have played it safe. Safe doesn't get remembered. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile. Something cooler, sharper. No, it doesn't. She walked away without another word. Her heels clicked against industrial carpet until the sound disappeared into the ambient noise of a workplace that never stopped moving. Marcus sat down slowly. Priya appeared at his cubicle wall so fast she must have sprinted. Did Victoria Whitmore just talk to you? Apparently. About what? The Jensen campaign. Marcus. Priya's eyes went wide. CEOs don't comment on campaigns, ever, unless what? Unless something's happening. But nothing was happening. Nothing ever happened. Marcus returned to his screen and lost himself in color palettes and font choices until his phone alarm reminded him it was time to leave. Noah's school let out at 3. Marcus needed to be there by 3:15 or pay for aftercare he couldn't afford. The email arrived at 5:47. Marcus had just settled Noah on the apartment floor with crayons and fresh paper. Spaghetti bubbled on the stove jar sauce, nothing fancy, but Noah loved it like it came from a 5-star kitchen. The day's mail sat unopened on the counter. Bills he'd deal with tomorrow. His phone chimed. From Victoria Whitmore. Subject dinner meeting. Marcus's stomach dropped before he even opened it. Marcus, I wanted to thank you personally for your work on the Jensen campaign last quarter. Your contribution was invaluable to closing that deal. I'd like to discuss your career trajectory and some upcoming opportunities over dinner this Friday. My treat. Details to follow. Victoria, he read it 3 times. CEO personal email. Career trajectory. Opportunities. The words that every designer dreamed of seeing, and Marcus had stopped believing would ever apply to him. The second email arrived 5 minutes later with an address. Not a restaurant, a residential address, in a neighborhood Marcus had only seen in movies. Red flags waved themselves into visibility. Why not a restaurant? Why a private residence? Why him? But the medical bill sat on top of the pile of mail. Noah's specialist appointment last month. $1,847 after insurance denied the claim. 1,847 reasons Marcus couldn't afford to ignore an email from the CEO. He typed a response. Professional, grateful, accepted. Friday arrived too fast. Marcus arranged for Mrs. Patterson to watch Noah overnight, a rare occurrence that required promising pancakes for breakfast and a trip to the park. He put on his best suit, the charcoal one he'd bought for Sarah's funeral and worn exactly twice since. It still fit. Small victory. Noah watched him knot his tie with the gravity of a tiny judge. You look fancy, Daddy. I have an important meeting. With your boss. Something like that. Are you nervous? The question landed with unexpected weight. Marcus crouched down to Noah's eye level. A little, but you know what being nervous just means? You care about something. And caring about things is how we know we're doing something important. Noah processed this with the intensity he brought to everything. Then I'm nervous about my spelling test. That means spelling matters to you. That's good. They hugged. Noah smelled like crayons and the apple shampoo Marcus bought in bulk. 5 years old and already Marcus's entire world. The only thing he'd ever done that mattered more than a survival. Be good for Mrs. Patterson. I'm always good. That's not technically true. It's mostly true. Marcus left before he could change his mind. The sedan waited at the curb, not a taxi, a hired car. The driver said nothing during the 20-minute journey from Bay Ridge through Brooklyn, across the bridge into Manhattan, where the buildings grew taller and the gap between his life and theirs grew wider with every block. Upper East Side, old money, the kind of neighborhood where doormen knew your name and your net worth before you opened your mouth. The car stopped in front of a townhouse that belonged in a museum. "This is the address, sir." Marcus climbed out. The door opened before he could knock, and now here he stood in a dining room that cost more to furnish than he'd earned in a year being introduced as someone's boyfriend when he'd barely spoken to her before today. Harrison Whitmore studied Marcus the way scientists study bacteria. "Please sit." It wasn't a request. Marcus sat. Victoria took the chair beside him, her hand finding his under the table. Her fingers were ice. A man in formal attire Butler Marcus's mind supplied uselessly appeared with wine. Marcus accepted a glass he had no intention of drinking. He needed every bit of clarity he possessed. "So Marcus," Harrison carved into his steak with surgical precision, "what exactly is your position at my daughter's company?" "Senior creative designer, sir." "Senior." Harrison let the word hang in the air like an indictment. "And how long have you held that title?" "3 years." 3 years at the same level. Harrison's eyebrow lifted fractionally. "Interesting career trajectory." The judgment landed exactly where Harrison intended. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but kept his expression neutral. A man measures success not by the applause he receives, but by the dinners he puts on the table. "I prefer to let my work speak for itself, sir. The Jensen campaign doubled their revenue quarter over quarter. And yet you remain senior designer." "The work matters more than the title." Margaret Whitmore dabbed at her lips with a napkin that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly grocery budget. "Serena, darling, you never mentioned you were seeing anyone. This is all so sudden." Victoria's posture never wavered. "We wanted to keep things private. You know how people talk." "Indeed." Margaret turned her attention to Marcus with the focus of a sniper acquiring a target. "And your family, Marcus? Where are they from?" "Baltimore originally. My mother still lives there." "And your father?" The question came casual. "The trap is anything but." "He left when I was 7. I haven't seen him since." Margaret and Harrison exchanged a glance that communicated volumes without sound. Broken home. No father figure. Red flag flying at full mast. Marcus had spent his entire life being measured by people like the Whitmores. People who saw circumstances before character, background before capability. He knew this dance. He'd learned the steps the hard way. "I understand you have a child." Harrison set down his fork. "A son?" "Yes, Noah, he's 5. And the mother, the question hit like a fist to the solar plexus. No warning, no mercy. Marcus met Harrison's gaze directly. "She passed away 3 years ago, car accident. I'd rather not discuss the details over dinner." Something shifted in the room. Subtle, tectonic. Margaret's hand stilled on her wineglass. Harrison's expression flickered, not sympathy exactly, but acknowledgement. Recognition of a loss that transcended class boundaries. "I'm sorry for your loss." The words were formal, automatic, but at least they were words. "Thank you, sir." Victoria's hand squeezed his under the table. When Marcus looked at her, he saw something new in her expression. Not the desperate pleading from before. Something softer. Something dangerous. Gratitude. The dinner crawled forward. Questions and answers. Parries and riposts. Every exchange a small battle where the rules favored the house. "Where did you attend university?" "Maryland, full academic scholarship." "Oh, scholarship." Margaret's smile could have cut glass. "How wonderful." The subtext screamed loud enough to damage hearing. Scholarship meant poor, meant begging for money, meant not one of us. "What are your long-term career plans?" "To keep doing what I love, design, raise my son. I don't need more than that." Harrison's eyebrow rose. "Modest ambitions." "With respect, sir, my idea of success is watching my son sleep soundly each night. If that's modest, I'll take it. Real ambition isn't climbing to the top of the ladder. It's building a ladder strong enough that your son can stand on your shoulders." Harrison studied Marcus longer than necessary. Something was changing, some calculation being revised. By the time dessert appeared, something chocolate in French that Marcus couldn't have pronounced with a dictionary, his entire body vibrated with suppressed tension. Every muscle coiled, every nerve firing. He felt like he'd run a marathon while standing still. "Would you excuse me?" Marcus stood. "I need some air." No one stopped him. The October night hit like a blessing. Cool, clean, real. Marcus descended the front steps and stood on the sidewalk breathing in air that didn't taste like money and judgment. The door opened behind him. Victoria. She closed it quietly and stood there, arms wrapped around herself despite the cashmere wrap that probably cost what Marcus paid in rent. "You owe me an explanation." His voice came out harder than intended. "And you owe it to me now. I know how this looks." "No, you don't. You don't know how it looks to be ambushed into playing boyfriend for your parents without warning. You don't know what it's like to sit in that dining room being dissected by people who decided I wasn't good enough before I opened my mouth." "You're right." The admission stopped him. "I'm sorry, I should have asked, should have explained, should have given you a choice." She took a shaky breath. "But they gave me a deadline, tonight, and I panicked." "A deadline for what?" "They're trying to force me to marry someone. Bryce Hamilton. His father and mine are business partners. They've been planning this merger, this marriage for years." Marcus stared at her. "So you decided to drag me into your family drama without asking?" "Bryce is a nightmare, Marcus." Victoria pulled out her phone, showed him a PDF document. Legal letterhead, restraining order against Bryce Hamilton, filed by an ex-girlfriend 3 years ago. "His family buried this with money, and my parents don't care because the merger will make everyone richer." The document looked legitimate, detailed, disturbing. "What does any of this have to do with me?" I needed someone they couldn't buy. Someone who wouldn't use this situation to climb the ladder or leverage it for personal gain. Her voice dropped. "I've watched you for months, Marcus. The way you work, the way you talk about your son. You're the most genuine person in that entire company. You watched me." The words came out flat. "And decided I'd make a good prop for your rebellion." She flinched. I know it's terrible. I know I should have asked, but I was out of time and options," and her eyes were bright with something, tears maybe, or just reflected street light. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to help me. 4 months, just 4 months of pretending, and I can figure out how to get free of this." "And what do I get?" "Whatever you want, a promotion, a raise, name it." Marcus shook his head. "I don't want money I didn't earn, and I don't want a title I didn't deserve." He thought about Noah, about mornings rushing breakfast to make it to work on time, about evenings too exhausted to read more than one bedtime story, about the medical bills that multiplied faster than he could pay them down. Marcus pulled out his wallet, extracted the folded paper he had been carrying for 2 weeks. The most recent statement from Noah's specialist. "My son has asthma. The treatment's insurance doesn't cover costs $2,000 a month. I can't afford it." Victoria took the paper. "Read it." Her expression shifted. "I'll cover all medical expenses. Everything. And flexible hours so you can be there for him. 4 months. The day your parents back off, we're done. 4 months." They shook hands. The deal sealed with skin on skin and desperation on both sides. "One more thing." Marcus kept his grip firm. "I need this in writing, terms, escape clauses. If this blows up early and I get fired, you guarantee I don't get blacklisted from the industry. I'll have it drafted by Monday. And you never meet or mention my son unless I agree. Noah isn't part of this arrangement." Victoria's expression turned solemn. "You have my word." Marcus released her hand and stepped back. "I should go." "Thank you." Her voice barely registered above the street noise. "I won't forget this." He walked away without looking back. Behind him, Victoria Wetmore stood alone on the steps of her family's mansion, watching his retreat until he disappeared around the corner. The subway ride home took forever. Marcus sat in a nearly empty car, staring at his reflection in the dark window. What have I done? The question circled like a vulture. He'd just agreed to lie to some of the most powerful people in New York, to fake a relationship with his CEO, to risk everything, his job, his reputation, his son's stability, on the desperate gamble of a woman he barely knew. For medical bills and flexible hours. For Noah. Always for Noah. The apartment was dark when he arrived. Patterson had left hours ago, probably after Marcus texted that he'd be late. Noah's door stood slightly ajar. Marcus pushed it open carefully. His son slept curled around a stuffed triceratops, breathing steady and clear for once. The nebulizer sat on the nightstand, already cleaned and ready for morning. On Noah's desk, a new drawing had been started, 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one small, one with long hair. Marcus's chest tightened. He retreated to the living room and pulled out the couch bed. The springs protested. Everything in this apartment was old, worn, held together by necessity and hope. His phone buzzed. "Thank you. I won't forget this." V. Marcus stared at the message, typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on none. He set the phone aside and lay down, staring at the ceiling where water stains drew maps of countries that didn't exist. Sleep felt impossible. His mind replayed the dinner. Harrison's cold assessment, Margaret's surgical questions, Victoria's trembling hand under the table, the look in her eyes when he agreed. Desperation recognizes desperation. He must have dozed eventually because he woke to Noah climbing onto the couch bed, dinosaur clutched to his chest. "Bad dream, buddy." Noah nodded and burrowed against Marcus's side. 5 years old and already learning that the world held more shadows than light. Marcus wrapped an arm around his son and felt the small body relax into sleep. This was why. This right here. The weight of his son trusting him to make the world safe. The responsibility that had kept him standing when Sarah died, and every fiber of his being wanted to collapse. Being a father meant making impossible choices and living with the consequences. 4 months. He could survive 4 months of anything if it meant Noah got the medication he needed. If it meant Marcus could leave work in time for dinner and homework and bedtime stories. If it meant building something better than the hand-to-mouth existence that was slowly grinding them both down. Through the window, sunrise began bleeding color into the sky. Saturday, Marcus had promised Noah the park if the weather held. His phone lit up with an email notification. From Catherine Whitmore, subject "Welcome to the family." Marcus's blood went cold. He opened it with hands that wanted to shake. "Marcus, it was lovely to meet you last evening. I do hope we'll be seeing more of you. I've taken the liberty of conducting some background research, standard procedure for anyone entering our social circle. I'm sure you understand. Looking forward to learning more about you. Warmly, Catherine." The word research sat in his gut like poison. Background research. They were investigating him. Of course they were. People like the Whitmores didn't accept anything at face value. Marcus set the phone down carefully, rose without disturbing Noah, walked to the window and looked down at the street below. A car sat at the curb that hadn't been there when he came home. Sedan, dark, tinted windows. As Marcus watched, a flash of light reflected off something in the front seat. Binoculars maybe, or a camera lens. They were already watching. The game had begun before he'd even agreed to play. Noah stirred on the couch, coughed twice, settled again. Marcus returned to his son's side and sat there in the growing light, watching the small chest rise and fall, counting breaths like prayers. 4 months. He could survive anything for 4 months. He had to. Monday morning arrived with the weight of consequence. Marcus stepped into Whitmore Media at 7:15 earlier than usual, hoping to avoid the worst of it. Hope proved useless. Priya intercepted him before he reached his cubicle. "Is it true?" "Okay." Her voice carried enough volume that heads turned. 3 designers Marcus barely knew stopped their conversation to stare. "Is what true, you and Victoria Hayes?" She caught herself. "Whitmore. Victoria Whitmore." The news had leaked. Of course it had. Wealthy people didn't keep secrets, they controlled the narrative around them. Someone at that dinner had talked, probably the butler who'd served wine with the discretion of a town crier. "Where did you hear that?" "Where didn't I hear it, Marcus? It's all over the building. The CEO and a senior designer." She lowered her voice, stepped closer. "That's nuclear." By 9 o'clock, every floor knew. Marcus felt eyes tracking him through the break room. Conversation stopped when he approached, resumed in whispers when he passed. The attention felt like insects crawling under his skin. Jake Preston made his move during the 10 o'clock design review. "Hey, Marcus, congratulations on the promotion." The room went silent. 8 designers, 1 art director, Todd, sitting at the head of the conference table with an expression like curdled milk. I haven't been promoted. Oh, Jake's smile could have stripped paint. My mistake. I just assumed, given the new relationship, that you'd be moving up. You know, the usual way people climb ladders around here. Marcus set down his coffee with enough force that it sloshed. You want to say that again? Guys, Priya stood. Let's keep this professional. I'm being completely professional. Jake leaned back in his chair, all false innocence, just acknowledging Marcus's strategic networking skills. Marcus was across the table before conscious thought caught up with fury. Jake's chair tipped backward. Papers scattered. Someone gasped. Todd's voice cut through like a blade. Both of you out, now! The hallway felt too bright after the conference room's controlled lighting. Marcus's hands were shaking. He pressed them against his thighs and focused on breathing. Jake emerged 15 seconds later, straightening his collar with theatrical precision. Touchy subject. You don't know anything about me. I know you've been here 3 years with nothing to show for it. Suddenly you're dating the CEO and everyone's supposed to pretend that's coincidence. Before Marcus could respond, an HR representative appeared. Young woman clipboard expression, carefully neutral in the way that meant trouble. Mr. Anderson, could you come with me, please? The walk to HR felt like a perp walk, past cubicles where people pretended not to watch, past conference rooms where meetings paused mid-sentence, down corridors Marcus rarely visited because senior designers didn't get called to HR unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. The conference room door opened. Harrison Whitmore sat at the head of the table. Marcus stopped in the doorway. Every instinct screamed retreat. The HR representative gestured toward a chair. Marcus sat because refusing would make everything worse. Mr. Anderson? Harrison's voice held the temperature of permafrost. Let's be clear about something. I don't like this arrangement. With respect, dear, I don't need you to like it. You're a complication in a carefully planned merger. If you damage my daughter's reputation in any way, your daughter came to me. Marcus kept his voice level through sheer force of will. Maybe ask yourself why she felt she had to. Harrison's expression could have been carved from granite. The HR representative scribbled notes without making eye contact. Seconds stretched into hours. You have nerve, I'll give you that. The admission landed like a confession. The HR representative cleared her throat. Given the ATH relationship between Mr. Anderson and Ms. Whitmore, we feel it's best to eliminate any appearance of impropriety. Effective immediately, Marcus will transfer to the Special Projects Division. No direct reporting relationship. Separate floor. This protects both parties from accusations of favoritism. Marcus understood immediately. Containment. Exile disguised as procedure. And if I refuse, then we'll need to discuss alternative arrangements. The HR representative's smile never reached her eyes, but I'm sure that won't be necessary. Harrison stood. One more thing, Anderson. My daughter may have made her choice, but you're being watched. Every move, every decision. Don't give me a reason to make yours. He left without waiting for response. The door clicked shut with the finality of a cell lock. The new office occupied the 9th floor, tucked in a corner where natural light came filtered through buildings across the street. Smaller than his cubicle, one desk, one chair, a window that looked onto brick and pigeon droppings. But it had a door, privacy Marcus had never possessed before. Priya found him unpacking his ball of personal effects at lunch. They exiled you. They protected themselves. Same thing. She perched on the edge of his desk exactly like she had that morning a lifetime ago. You know, 2 designers got fired this morning. Marcus looked up sharply. Who? Brad Kellerman and Melissa Torres. HR said they violated the company's harassment policy. What did they do? Made jokes about diversity hires in the break room. Someone reported them. Guess who? Victoria, protecting him again, making enemies on his behalf without asking if he wanted the help. This is getting out of control. You think Priya studied him with uncomfortable intensity. Marcus, what's really going on? Because the guy I know doesn't date his boss. The guy I know keeps his head down and does the work and goes home to his kid. People change. Not like this. Not overnight. He wanted to tell her, wanted to explain the trap he'd walked into, the bargain he'd made, the tightrope he was walking between financial survival and professional suicide. But the words stayed locked behind his teeth. I need to get back to work. Priya left without pushing further. Marcus sat alone in his new office, staring at blank walls that felt like they were closing in. That evening, Noah asked the question Marcus had been dreading. They were in the bathroom, Noah submerged in bubbles that smelled like artificial strawberries. Marcus knelt beside the tub, helping rinse shampoo from hair that never stayed combed for more than 10 minutes. Daddy, why are you sad? Just work stuff, buddy. Did someone be mean to you? The phrasing childish grammar carrying adult understanding hit Marcus in the chest. Why would you ask that? Ms. Rivera at school said some people are mean for no reason. She said some people are mean because of how other people look. 5 years old, already learning lessons Marcus had hoped to delay for years, maybe forever. Who's Ms. Rivera? My teacher. She read us a book about a boy who looked different, and people were mean until they knew him better. Marcus stopped rinsing, looked at his son, bright-eyed, dinosaur obsession world, still mostly safe because Marcus worked himself to exhaustion, keeping it that way. Sometimes people make judgments before they know the whole story, but that says more about them than it does about you. Or me, you understand? Noah nodded with the gravity of someone decoding the universe's secrets. Did someone judge you, Daddy? Maybe, but I'm okay, we're okay. Noah reached out with wet hands and patted Marcus's face, leaving bubbles on his cheek. You're the best daddy. Marcus held his son until the bathwater went cold. Week 3 brought the Summit Foods opportunity. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy. Every creative team had prepared pitches for the contract that could define the year. National campaign, major budget, the kind of work that built careers or destroyed them. Jake Preston went first. Traditional family around a dinner table. Smiling parents. 2.5 children. Safe. Predictable. The client, Mrs. Henderson, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and sharper questions, looked bored before he finished the second slide. Todd pitched celebrity endorsements. Expensive. Flashy. Mrs. Henderson asked about ROI, and Todd stumbled through projections that didn't add up. 3 more teams presented variations on themes that had been done to death. Diversity as checkbox. Families as market segments. Nothing that felt real. Marcus stood. His hands were steady. His voice was clear. And for the first time in 3 years, people listened without looking past him towards someone more important. A single father, he clicked to the first mock-up. Man and child. Kitchen. Dawn light. Not a tragedy story. Not an inspiration story. Just life. Making breakfast. Helping with homework. Learning to braid hair because there's no one else to do it. Click. Another image. Bedtime story. Sick day. Park on Sunday. The campaign isn't about what's missing. It's about what's there. The small moments that build a family. Because families aren't defined by structure. They're defined by showing up. The room stayed silent when he finished. Victoria sat at the head of the table, her face unreadable. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, fingers steepled. This is the one. Victoria's expression never changed, but something flickered behind her eyes. This is what we're doing. Mrs. Henderson extended her hand across the table. Marcus shook it, feeling the eyes of every designer in the room burning holes in his back. When can we start? Production consumed the next 2 weeks. Marcus led creative direction for the first time in his career, coordinating photographers, copywriters, media buyers. The irony wasn't lost on him, fake boyfriend directing a campaign about authenticity. But the work demanded everything he had, left no room for examining contradictions. Victoria involved herself more than CEOs typically did, appearing at meetings, reviewing mock-ups, asking questions that sharpened concepts instead of diluting them. Late one evening past 9, they were alone in the conference room. Outside Manhattan glittered like dropped diamonds. Inside, storyboards covered every surface. Why advertising? The question came from nowhere. Marcus looked up from the layout he'd been adjusting for 20 minutes. I like making people feel something real. Have you felt something real since your wife? The question should have been intrusive. Instead, it felt like careful excavation uncovering something buried but not dead. I feel plenty, I just don't share it. Why not? Because sharing means vulnerability. Vulnerability means risk. Risk means potentially losing what little I've managed to hold on to. Victoria studied him across 6 feet of conference table and the chasm of their different lives. You're really good at this, the work. It's what I do. No, and she shook her head. It's who you are. There's a difference, Wayento. The moment stretched. Outside, a siren wailed. Inside, something shifted that Marcus couldn't name and didn't want to examine too closely. I should get home. Mrs. Patterson charges extra after 10. Of course. But neither moved, not immediately. Not until Victoria's phone buzzed with some emergency that needed her attention, and Marcus could escape into the elevator and the subway in the October night that felt colder than it should. Week 4 brought Victoria to his apartment. She needed to review final storyboards, or so the email said. Marcus suspected excuse but couldn't prove it. He cleaned for an hour before she arrived, cramming toys into closets, hiding dishes, making the place look less like controlled chaos and more like intentional minimalism. The knock came at 7. Marcus opened the door to find Victoria in jeans and a sweater, looking younger without her corporate armor. She carried a leather portfolio and an expression of someone entering foreign territory. Come in? She stepped across the threshold and stopped, taking in the space with the focus of someone cataloging evidence. The pull-out couch that wouldn't fold back up until tomorrow. The kitchen table covered in Noah's drawings. The window that looked onto the building across the courtyard where someone was always yelling in a language Marcus didn't speak. Your home is nice. The lie was kind. Marcus appreciated it anyway. It's not much, but it's ours. Noah's bedroom door creaked open. Small face peered out, sleep-heavy and confused. Daddy? Victoria crouched before Marcus could intervene, lowering herself to eye level with the precision of someone who'd never done this before and was determined to get it right. Hi there, I'm Victoria. I work with your dad. Noah studied her with the unfiltered scrutiny only children possess. No pretense, no politeness, just pure assessment. You're pretty. Thank you. Are you Daddy's boss? Victoria glanced at Marcus. Something flickered across her face, amusement maybe, or recognition of absurdity. Something like that. What's a boss? It means your daddy is so talented that I have to come all the way to his house to learn from him. Noah's entire face lit up. He turned to Marcus with expression that said, See, I told you that you were special. Daddy, you're teaching the boss lady. Something cracked open in Marcus's chest. Not pain, something warmer and far more dangerous. All right, little man, back to bed. Can the boss lady stay for breakfast? We'll see. Say goodnight. Good night, boss lady. After Noah was settled, 3 stories, 2 glasses of water, 1 trip to the bathroom, Marcus found Victoria standing by the refrigerator, studying the gallery of drawings held up by alphabet magnets, dinosaurs and dragons, stick figures with smiles bigger than their heads, one that showed 2 people, an empty space where a third might go. He's wonderful. Her voice carried weight that surprised him. He's everything. You're raising him right, Marcus. Anyone can see that. He's the only thing I've ever done that matters. Victoria turned to face him. In the dim kitchen light, with her corporate polish stripped away, she looked almost vulnerable. Lost. Can I tell you something? Marcus nodded. I don't know what that feels like. Mattering to someone. My parents love me, I suppose, in their way. But I've always been a piece on their chessboard. Something to be positioned, leveraged. I spent my whole childhood trying to earn something that should have been freely given. She laughed, but the sound held no humor. I'm 29 years old, and I've never once been asked what I actually want. Not by my parents, not by anyone. The confession hung between them. Marcus leaned against the counter, understanding suddenly why she'd chosen him. Not because he was convenient, because he was safe, because he wanted nothing from her except what they had already negotiated. So what do you want? The question hung between them. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears or just the reflection of overhead fluorescence. I don't know, isn't that pathetic? That's not pathetic. That's honest. They talked until nearly midnight. Victoria told him about growing up in a house where nannies replaced parents, where report cards were reviewed for strategic value rather than celebrated. About realizing her engagement wasn't a question, but a foregone conclusion. Marcus told her about Sarah, about the grocery store when his phone rang, about coming home to Noah asking where mommy was, about months of going through motions mechanical survival until the day he broke down crying in the shower because it was the only place his son couldn't hear him. I used to think my life ended that night, but Noah still needed breakfast the next morning, still needed someone to take him to daycare, still needed me. So I got up, kept getting up, not because I'm strong, because I didn't have a choice. It was. Victoria reached across the table, took his hand. Neither spoke for a long moment. Something had shifted. The fake relationship was becoming complicated by something neither had planned for, something real. Week 7 shattered any pretense of control. The call came during a client presentation. Marcus's phone vibrated against his thigh. He ignored it. It vibrated again and again. He excused himself, stepped into the hallway, answered, "Mr. Anderson, this is Bay Ridge Elementary. Your son has a fever of 102. We need you to pick him up immediately." Marcus was moving before thought caught up, grabbed his jacket, headed for the elevator. Victoria appeared beside him, matching his pace. "What's wrong, Mister?" "Noah's sick. I'm coming with you." "You don't have to. I want to." They drove in Victoria's car, some luxury vehicle that probably cost more than Marcus would earn in 5 years. She navigated Manhattan traffic with the aggressive precision of someone who'd learned to drive in the city and refused to be intimidated by it. Bay Ridge Elementary looked exactly like every other public school. Tired building, chain link fence, playground equipment that had seen better decades. Marcus signed Noah out while Victoria waited in the lobby, looking as out of place as a Rembrandt in a dollar store. Noah emerged from this nurse's office, face flushed, breathing shallow. His eyes lit up when he saw Victoria. "Boss lady came." "Of course I came." Victoria's voice went soft in a way Marcus had never heard. "Had to make sure you're okay." The urgent care center was mercifully empty. They saw a doctor within 20 minutes. Viral infection. Nothing serious. But Noah's asthma complicated everything. Adjustments to medication. New prescriptions. The doctor handed Marcus paperwork and a bill that made his stomach drop. $3,200 after insurance. For one visit. Victoria leaned close, voice pitched low enough that only Marcus heard. "I'll handle it." Every fiber of his being wanted to refuse. Pride demanded it, but Noah needed the medication more than Marcus needed his pride intact. "Thank you." The waiting room was institutional beige and smelled like antiseptic. Noah dozed between them, his small hand wrapped around Victoria's fingers. She didn't pull away. Marcus watched them and felt his heart stumble over a beat he'd forgotten how to make. 3 years of emotional numbness. 3 years of going through motions. And suddenly here was this woman, this complicated, impossible woman, holding his son's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. This wasn't part of the plan. None of this was part of the plan. 2 a.m. found them still in the waiting room. Noah had been admitted for overnight observation, standard procedure for asthma complications. Marcus and Victoria sat in plastic chairs that seemed designed to prevent comfort. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria's voice barely registered above the ambient noise of a hospital that never slept. "Go ahead." "What was she like, your wife?" The question should have hurt. Instead, it felt like careful archaeology examining something precious without disturbing it. "Sarah was light. Everything I'm not. She made the worst days better just by existing in the same room. When she walked into a place, people noticed. Not because she was trying, because what joy is magnetic." "How did you survive losing her?" "I didn't have a choice. Noah needed breakfast the next morning. Needed someone to read to him. Needed me to pretend the world hadn't ended. So I pretended until pretending became surviving. And surviving became living. Mostly." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I've never made a single decision for myself. Every choice, school, career, even my haircut was decided by committee. By parents who saw me as investment rather than person. Do you know what that does? Spending 29 years wondering if anything about you is actually yours. What do you want?" The same question he'd asked in his kitchen. This time in the fluorescent waiting room with her defenses worn thin by worry and exhaustion. Victoria's answer came different. "I want to matter, not as someone's daughter or someone's merger opportunity, just as myself. I want to make choices and live with consequences. I want to feel something real instead of this constant performance. She looked at him. You make me feel real. Marcus's breath caught. The moment stretched taut, fragile, dangerous. Victoria. I know this is a mess. I know I dragged you into something impossible. But when I'm with you and Noah, I feel like maybe I could be someone worth being. Not the CEO, not the Whitmore daughter, just me. Before Marcus could respond, a nurse appeared. Mr. Anderson, your son is asking for you. They stood together, walked together. The hallway stretched ahead like the future uncertain, complicated, impossible to navigate alone. Noah was awake when they entered, propped on pillows, oxygen tubing in his nose. His face brightened. You're both here. Where else would we be? Victoria sat on the edge of the bed with the careful precision of someone who'd never done this. You gave us quite a scare. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be well. Noah reached for her hand. She took it without hesitation. Will you stay? Victoria looked at Marcus. Something passed between them. Question, permission, acknowledgement of boundaries dissolving faster than either could control. Of course. They stayed until dawn broke over Brooklyn, stayed through shift changes and vital checks and the slow reassurance that Noah would be fine. Stayed past when visiting hours ended and nurses politely suggested they go home. Marcus drove Victoria back to Manhattan at 4 a.m. The city was quieter than he'd ever seen it, streets empty enough that traffic lights felt like suggestions rather than commands. They stopped outside her building, doorman visible through glass doors probably judging the late arrival. Marcus. Her voice stopped, his hand on the door handle. Is this still just an arrangement to you? The question landed like a grenade with the pin pulled. I don't know what this is anymore. Me neither. Neither moved, neither spoke. The silence built walls and bridges simultaneously. Finally, good night, Victoria. Good night. He watched her disappear into her building. Watched until the elevator doors closed and he couldn't see her anymore. Then he sat in the driver's seat of her car that he'd need to return somehow and felt the weight of everything he'd been trying not to feel crash over him like a wave. He was in trouble. He was in so much trouble. Meanwhile, 3 weeks earlier, Margaret Whitmore had made a phone call. Frank Morrison ran the kind of investigation firm that wealthy people used when they needed information and didn't ask questions about methods. 20 years of digging through lives. 20 years of confirming suspicions and occasionally surprising clients with uncomfortable truths. Margaret's instructions were clear. I want to know everything about Marcus Anderson, everything. Frank delivered his report in week 6, comprehensive, detailed, thorough. Financial records showed a man living paycheck to paycheck. No criminal record. No scandals, no hidden vices or secret debts beyond medical bills that would crush most people. Wife Sarah deceased 3 years prior. Drunk driver, confirmed. Son, Noah, age 5. Asthma, Bay Ridge Elementary. Medical expenses averaging $2,000 monthly. Social media presence minimal. No dating profiles. No photographs with anyone except his son. And critically, no evidence of any relationship with Victoria Whitmore before the night of their dinner. Frank's conclusion, typed in bold at the bottom of the last page, no prior relationship detected. High probability of recent arrangement or fabrication. Margaret read the report twice, set it aside, made notes in her precise handwriting. Week 8 arrived with an invitation. Victoria found it on her desk. Embossed cardstock, her mother's handwriting. Family dinner this Friday, 8 p.m. Don't be late. Bring Marcus. The formality set off alarms. Margaret Whitmore didn't do casual dinners. Every gathering served a purpose. Every invitation carried subtext. Victoria called Marcus immediately. My mother wants us for dinner Friday. Should we cancel? No, that'll make it worse. We go. We handle it. They met Thursday evening to prepare. Marcus's apartment, Noah at Mrs. Patterson's for the evening. Strategy session that felt like preparing for battle. If she brings up timeline stick to our story, Victoria paced his living room energy wound tight enough to snap. What is our story? We met at the company mixer 2 months before the dinner. Kept it quiet because of your position. That's not what happened. It's what should have happened. What could have happened. Close enough to possible that we can sell it. Marcus watched her pace. recognized the fear underneath the planning, the same fear he'd seen that first night on the townhouse steps. Victoria, what do you think she knows? Everything, nothing. I don't know. My mother doesn't show her cards until she's ready to play them. Friday came too fast. They arrived at the townhouse at 8 exactly. Margaret answered the door herself, always a bad sign. Harrison stood in the dining room, drink in hand, expression carved from ice. Dinner was served, the same table, the same china, the tension thick enough to choke on. Margaret waited until the main course before striking. I had some research done. She placed a folder on the table. Manila, thick, ominous. On you, Marcus, on your relationship with my daughter. Victoria's fork clattered against china. Mother, and there are no photographs of you two together before that dinner. No records of dates, no evidence of any relationship at all. Margaret opened the folder, spread its contents with the precision of a prosecutor presenting evidence. You've been lying to us, both of you. Harrison's face had turned to stone. He looked at Victoria with something worse than anger, disappointment. Tell me this isn't true. Victoria's composure finally cracked. She looked at Marcus, at her parents, trapped between the law and the truth with no safe direction. Marcus stood. The chair scraped against hardwood. All eyes turned to him. It's true. His voice cut through the silence like a blade through water. When this started, it was an arrangement. Your daughter needed someone you couldn't control, and I needed help with my son's medical bills. So yes, we lied. We've been lying from the beginning. Margaret's expression shifted, vindication mixed with something darker. So you admit, but you want to know something. Not once in all your investigation did you ask why your daughter felt she had to do this. Not once did you wonder what drove her to such desperate measures that lying to her own parents seemed like the better option. Marcus turned to Harrison. You're trying to force her to marry someone with a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend, someone who treats women like property. And you don't care because the merger will make everyone richer. So yes, I'm a complication. Yes, I'm not good enough by your standards. But at least I see your daughter as a person instead of a business asset. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus headed for the door. Behind him, Victoria's voice broke. Marcus, wait, he didn't stop, couldn't stop. The game was over, the truth was out, and he'd just burned every bridge that could have carried him to safety. The sidewalk outside felt like freedom and failure simultaneously. Cool October air, street noise, the world still turning despite everything falling apart. Victoria caught up with him halfway down the block. Why did you tell him, I'm done lying, to them, to you, to myself? What does that mean? This was supposed to be business, 4 months, then done, clean, simple. And now my son draws you into his pictures. Now I think about you when I should be working. He stopped. The words too big, too dangerous, too real. Say it. This is a mistake. You're my boss. You're from a different world. Victoria kissed him. The world narrowed to the point of contact. Her lips on his, her hands in his jacket. 3 weeks of denial combusting into something that felt inevitable and impossible simultaneously. When she pulled back, they stood breathing hard, foreheads touching. That was real. Yeah. What do we do now? Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed. Email notification. He almost ignored it. Almost. From Horizon Creative Group's subject, career opportunity. The timing felt like cosmic mockery. He opened it. Read. Rate again. Creative director position. 145,000 annually. 40% increase. Flexible hours guaranteed. Health coverage that would actually cover Noah's treatments. Start date, immediate. What is it? Marcus showed her the phone, watched her face fall as she read. This is everything you need. I know. You should take it. After what I've put you through, you deserve a fresh start. The words made sense. The logic was sound. This was his exit strategy. Clean break, financial security, no complications. But that night after Marcus got home and checked on Noah, sleeping peacefully with his dinosaur army, standing guard, he sat at the kitchen table with the job offer glowing on his laptop screen. Noah had drawn a new picture. 3 people holding hands. Dad, Noah, boss lady. His son hadn't drawn his mother, had drawn Victoria instead. Because Victoria had held his hand in the hospital, because she made Marcus smile, because in Noah's 5-year-old understanding of the world family was defined by who showed up. Marcus stared at that drawing until his eyes burned, thought about teaching his son to run when things got hard, thought about playing it safe versus choosing to live. His phone buzzed. "Are you okay? Can we talk?" Marcus looked at the message, at the job offer, at his son's drawing of a family that didn't exist yet but maybe could. The choice stretched before him, safety or uncertainty, logic or feeling, the smart decision or the right one. He didn't answer the text, didn't close the job offer, just sat in the dark of his small apartment, listening to Noah breathe in the next room, and wondered what the hell he was going to do. Marcus made his decision at 6 a.m. watching Noah sleep. The Horizon offer sat open on his laptop cursor, blinking in the salary field where he was supposed to input his acceptance. One click. Financial security. Clean escape from the mess he'd created. He closed the laptop. The choice crystallized not as logic, but as certainty. He'd spent 3 years teaching Noah about integrity, about standing up when falling down would be easier, about choosing what's right over what's comfortable. Time to practice what he preached. His phone showed 17 missed calls from Victoria, 3 voicemails he hadn't listened to, text messages that scrolled back through the night like breadcrumbs leading toward disaster or salvation, he wasn't sure which. The last one sent at 5:13 a.m. "Please let me know you're okay." He typed, "I'm okay, we need to talk." Her response came instantly, as if she'd been awake waiting. "My office, 9 a.m. The morning routine with Noah proceeded with mechanical precision. Nebulizer treatment, breakfast. Getting dressed in backwards shirt that Noah insisted was forwards until Marcus showed him the tag. Small battles that felt enormous when Marcus's mind was elsewhere, playing out scenarios that all ended badly. Mrs. Patterson arrived at 7:30. "You look like you didn't sleep." "Rough night." "The boy okay?" Marcus glanced at Noah, currently explaining to his triceratops why it couldn't eat Lucky Charms for breakfast. "He's perfect. I'm the disaster." Mrs. Patterson studied him with eyes that had seen 73 years of human foolishness and learned not to judge too harshly. "Whatever you're facing, you'll get through it. You always do." Marcus wanted to believe her. Whitmore Media at 8:45 felt different. Hostile territory instead of workplace. Eyes tracked him from cubicles. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The elevator ride to the executive floor took forever, each floor, ding marking another second closer to consequences he couldn't predict. Victoria's assistant, young man, impeccable suit, expression of professional neutrality, gestured toward the closed door. "She's expecting you." Marcus knocked, entered before courage could fail him. Victoria stood at the window overlooking Madison Avenue. Morning light turned her silhouette into something ethereal. She turned when the door clicked shut. "You came. You asked. I thought after last night you might take that job and disappear." "I thought about it." And Marcus crossed to her desk, set his phone down, opened to the Horizon email with "decline" typed in the response field. "Not sent yet. Waiting for this moment." "I'm not going anywhere." Victoria's breath caught audibly. "Marcus, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because if I run now, I teach my son that when life gets complicated, you bail. That love is something to be afraid of instead of fought for. And I can't do that. Won't do that." The words hung between them like a bridge neither had built, but both needed to cross. "I'm staying, if you'll have me, not because of our arrangement, not because of flexible hours or medical bills, because when I think about my future, you're in it, and that terrifies me and feels right simultaneously." Victoria moved before he finished speaking, closed the distance, kissed him with the desperation of someone who'd been drowning and finally found air. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "I called an all-hands meeting for 10. I'm going to tell everyone." "Tell them what?" "Everything." The conference room at 9:55 held every employee who could fit. Standing room only. Designers and copywriters and account managers packed shoulder-to-shoulder, speculation running through them like electricity through wire. Marcus stood at the back. Priya found him, squeezed his arm in silent support. Victoria entered at 10 exactly. Walked to the front. No notes. No presentation. Just her and 200 employees waiting for explanation. I have something to say, and I'm going to say it once. The room went silent. Many of you have heard rumors about my personal life, about Marcus Anderson and me. I'm not here to discuss the details of our relationship, but I am here to say this. She pulled up slides behind her. The Summit Foods campaign results. 65% sales increase. 3 industry awards pending. Client testimonials. Marcus Anderson is one of the most talented designers I have ever worked with. His campaign for Summit Foods came from genuine experience and authentic understanding of what families actually look like. Whatever you think about our relationship, it doesn't change his brilliance or his professionalism. Victoria's gaze swept the room, landing on faces that quickly looked away. If anyone has a problem working with him, you can discuss it with me directly. But I won't tolerate gossip, and I won't tolerate prejudice disguised as concern. She paused. The next words came harder, each one a bridge burned. Also effective immediately, I'm rejecting the Hamilton merger proposal and ending my engagement to Bryce Hamilton. My personal life is my own. This company will succeed or fail based on the quality of our work, not on who I marry for strategic advantage. Gasps rippled through the room. At the back, Harrison Whitmore stood frozen expression carved from granite. Then he turned and walked outdoor, swinging shut behind him, with finality that felt like thunder. The meeting ended in chaos. Employees filed out in clusters, voices rising in speculation and shock. Marcus waited until the room emptied, except for Victoria standing alone at the podium, looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. You just declared war on your father. I declared independence. There's a difference. Same casualties. Victoria gathered her materials with hands that trembled slightly. I spent my whole life letting other people fight my battles or avoiding them entirely. You stood up to my father for me. The least I could do was stand up for you. Marcus crossed to her, took her hands in his. What happens now? Now I find out if I'm unemployed. She laughed, but the sound carried no humor. Now we both find out. The answer came within the hour. Harrison's assistant, different from Victoria's older woman, who'd been with the company since its founding, appeared at Marcus's office. Mr. Whitmore requests your presence, immediately. The executive floor felt colder than before. Harrison's office occupied a corner that offered views of Manhattan, stretching toward horizons Marcus would never reach. The man himself stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, posture military straight. Close the door. Marcus did. Waited. Harrison let silence build like pressure behind a dam. You've created quite a situation. I didn't create anything. I just refused to keep lying. The Hamilton merger is worth $200 million. You've cost me that. I've cost you nothing. Your daughter made her choice. Harrison turned. His eyes held calculation colder than winter. Let me make you an offer. $500,000. Take it, disappear, and we can all move on. The number hung in the air. 500,000. More money than Marcus would earn in 5 years. Enough to solve every problem that kept him awake at night. Medical bills, better apartment, college fund for Noah. Security he'd never known. Marcus stood. I'm not for sale. Everyone has a price. Mine isn't money. He headed for the door. Harrison's voice stopped him. What is your price then? Marcus turned. Watching my son grow up with a father who has integrity, teaching him that some things matter more than comfort, showing him that real strength isn't measured by what you can take, but by what you refuse to give up. That's worth more than any number you could offer. The silence stretched. Harrison's expression shifted, not softening exactly, but recalculating, reassessing variables in an equation he'd thought was solved. Sit down. It wasn't a command this time. Closer to request. Marcus sat. Harrison poured 2 glasses of scotch from a crystal decanter that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Offered one. Marcus accepted because refusing felt petty. I was wrong about you. The admission landed like a stone in still water ripples spreading outward. That doesn't fix what you did to Victoria. I know, but it's a start. Harrison drank, studied Marcus with eyes that had built an empire and were learning perhaps too late that some things couldn't be bought or built. I thought I was protecting her, securing her future. It never occurred to me that security and happiness might not be the same thing. She needed a father, not a strategist. And you're going to teach me the difference. No, but maybe I can show you what it looks like. Harrison's laugh came unexpected, genuine. You really don't care who I am, do you? I care that you hurt your daughter. Beyond that, you're just another man trying to figure out how to do better. They drank in silence. Outside Manhattan moved through its daily choreography of ambition and survival. Inside, something shifted that neither man could name, but both recognized. The promotion Todd blocked last year, creative director position. It's yours if you want it. Marcus set down his glass. I don't want anything I didn't earn. You earned it 3 times over, but Todd was afraid you'd make him look incompetent, which you would have. Consider this correcting an error. And Victoria? What about her? This doesn't magically fix what's broken between you. I know. Harrison's expression turned somber. But broken things can be repaired. Takes time, takes effort, takes admitting you were wrong. I'm learning. Marcus stood, extended his hand. Harrison shook it, firm grip, eye contact, acknowledgement, passing between them that transcended words. We'll see. Yes, we will. The next surprise came from Margaret Whitmore. Marcus found her voicemail at lunch. We need to talk, just us. Coffee at Gramercy Park. 2 p.m., please. The please caught his attention. Margaret Whitmore didn't say please, didn't ask, commanded with the certainty of someone who'd never been refused. He went anyway. The coffee shop she'd chosen was quiet, tucked away from tourist traffic. Margaret sat in the back corner, dressed down in ways that suggested she'd deliberately tried not to look like herself. No jewelry, simple sweater. Hair pulled back without the usual precision. She looked older without her armor, more human. Marcus sat across from her, waited. Thank you for coming. You said please, figured that deserved acknowledgement. Margaret smiled, but the expression held weight. I want to tell you something I've never told anyone. Not Harrison, not Victoria, no one. She pulled a photograph from her purse. Old, worn at the edges. Young woman, clearly Margaret, but decades younger, standing beside a man in mechanic's overalls. Garage visible behind them. Working class neighborhood. That's my father, Queens. He fixed cars for 40 years. My mother cleaned houses. I got into Columbia on scholarship because my test scores were perfect, and my essay about growing up poor was exactly what they wanted to read. Marcus studied the photo. The gap between that girl and the woman who'd interrogated him felt impossible. I met Harrison junior year. His family took one look at me and decided I was gold digger trash. Not our class, not good enough. So I spent 30 years becoming acceptable. Lost myself in the process. She took the photo back, handled it like something fragile that might crumble. When I see you with Victoria, I see who I used to be, before I let them change me, before I forgot where I came from. And it terrifies me because I'm watching my daughter choose what I gave up. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm trying to save my daughter from becoming me, and I think you might be the only person who can help. Marcus absorbed this. The woman who'd looked at him like something stuck to her shoe was admitting shared ground, confessing to lies she'd been living so long they'd become truth. You need to tell Victoria. I know. And you need to mean it, not as strategy, as actual apology from actual mother to actual daughter. Margaret's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. Will you help me? I'm not the one you need to apologize to. I know, but I need to start somewhere. They talked for an hour. Margaret told him about growing up poor, about the shame she'd carried about building walls so high she'd forgotten what they were protecting. Marcus told her about Sarah, about learning that pride was expensive when your son needed medicine, about choosing between ego and survival. By the end, Margaret looked exhausted, wrung out, but lighter somehow. I should go see her. She'll be at the office until 7. No, Margaret shook her head. I should go to her home, on her territory, not mine. Marcus walked her to the street. She paused before leaving. Thank you for not making this easy. Nothing worth having ever is. She left in a car that was notably less ostentatious than the one she'd arrived in for their first meeting. Marcus watched her go and felt something shift in the universe's accounting. Not forgiveness exactly, but the possibility of it. The call from Victoria came at 8 p.m. She came to see me, my mother. Victoria's voice carried wonder and confusion in equal measure. I know. We had coffee this afternoon. She told me Marcus. She told me about growing up poor, about her father, about being rejected by Harrison's family. Things I never knew. Things that explain so much. How do you feel? Confused, angry, Sarah, hopeful, I don't know. 29 years of thinking one thing and suddenly it's all different. That's normal. Is it? Yeah, it is. Silence on the line, not empty, full of things neither knew how to say. Marcus, yeah, thank you for whatever you said to her, for helping her find courage to tell me. I didn't do anything. She did the work. Still, thank you. After they hung up, Marcus sat in his small apartment, listening to Noah's breathing from the next room, feeling pieces of something impossible slowly clicking into place. Week 12 brought the threat Marcus had been dreading. He was leaving the office 5:30, his new normal, when Bryce Hamilton materialized from the parking garage. Tall, handsome in the way expensive grooming creates, smile that didn't reach eyes that held the calculation of someone who'd never heard no and meant it. Marcus Anderson, not a question, statement of identification. I don't believe we've met. Bryce Hamilton, you've cost me something valuable. Marcus's hand moved instinctively toward his phone. Bryce noticed, laughed. Relax, I'm not here to threaten you, just to have a conversation man to man. We have nothing to discuss. I disagree. You've interfered in a carefully constructed business arrangement, a merger worth hundreds of millions, because you decided to play hero for a woman who was never yours to save. Victoria doesn't need saving, she needed a choice. There's a difference. Bryce's smile sharpened. Noble, I can see why she likes you, the working class integrity, the single father struggling against odds. Very romantic. If you have a point, my point is simple. This ends. You back away, Victoria comes to her senses, and we all get what we need. You keep your bum. Your son stays safe. Everyone wins. The last part landed like ice water. What did you say? Noah Wright, Bay Ridge Elementary. Mrs. Patterson watches him afternoons. Sweet kid, likes dinosaurs. Marcus had Bryce against the car before thought caught up with fury. Forearm across throat. Years of controlled patience combusting into violence, held barely in check. You go near my son. Or what? Bryce's voice came choked but smug. You're nobody, Anderson. I have lawyers, connections, resources you can't imagine. I will destroy you and everyone you love. Then destroy me. But if you touch my son, there won't be enough lawyers in Manhattan to protect you. Touching scene. Victoria's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Both men turned. She stood 10 feet away, phone-raised camera clearly recording. Every word, every threat, all captured. And I have very good lawyers. Better than yours, Bryce. I checked. Bryce released himself from Marcus's grip, straightening his collar with theatrical precision. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Victoria stepped closer. The steel in her voice could have cut diamonds. You threatened a child. That's criminal. You threatened she glanced at Marcus, the man I love. That's stupid, but mostly you proved exactly why I was right to refuse you. Because men who threaten children aren't men. They're cowards pretending at power. Bryce's composure cracked slightly. Your father? My father doesn't control me, hasn't for weeks. Try to keep up. He left expensive shoes clicking against pavement shoulders set in fury barely contained. Marcus stood breathing hard, adrenaline still singing through his veins. Victoria lowered her phone. Are you okay? He threatened Noah. I know, I heard. He won't touch him, I promise. Marcus looked at her, this woman who'd been stranger 12 weeks ago. Complication, 8 weeks ago, something else entirely now. You recorded everything. Everything, and I've already sent it to my lawyer and our security team. Bryce Hamilton just committed career suicide. Thank you. That's what partners do. Protect each other. The word landed with weight. Partners, not arrangement, not temporary, something real. The board meeting 3 days later decided everything. Victoria stood before 12 directors presenting the post-Hamilton strategy. Marcus sat in back observing present because Victoria had insisted and Harrison hadn't objected. The number spoke clearly. Summit Foods success. 3 new clients signed based on authentic creative work. Industry buzz building. Stock price stable despite merger cancellation. One director, Mr. Chen, 60-something, sharp eyes, raised his hand. Ms. Whitmore, impressive results, but this represents significant strategic shift. Who's driving the creative vision? Marcus Anderson, our new creative director. Murmurs rippled through the room. Chen consulted papers. Anderson, the Summit Foods campaign, 65% sales increase, multiple awards pending, client retention at 98%. Correct. And his promotion is based purely on merit. No other factors. The question carried subtext heavy enough to bruise. Victoria met Chen's gaze without flinching. His promotion is based on being the best designer in this company and everyone knowing it except the people who mattered. I'm correcting that oversight. Chen studied the numbers again, looked at Marcus, back to the numbers. Motion to approve the organizational restructure and associated promotions. Second, 3 hands rose. All in favor, unanimous. Marcus exhaled breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Victoria caught his eye across the room. Something passed between them. Victory, relief, recognition that they'd survived something that should have destroyed them. After the meeting, Harrison found Marcus in the hallway. Welcome to the executive floor. Your new office is ready Monday. Thank you. Don't thank me. You earned it. 3 times over, like I said. I'm just late recognizing that fact. Harrison paused, something shifting in his expression. My daughter is lucky to have you. Took me too long to see it. I'm lucky to have her. That too. They shook hands. This time felt different. Not allies exactly, but no longer enemies. Week 14 brought the dinner that rewrote everything. Same townhouse, same dining room, same table where Marcus had first been ambushed into Victoria's life, but different energy entirely. Margaret answered the door, smiled genuine warm, and pulled Marcus into a hug that surprised them both. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting us. Us included Noah, dressed in his best shirt and carrying a drawing folder with the solemn importance of someone bearing state documents. Marcus had spent 20 minutes convincing him that dinosaur ties were not yet acceptable formal wear. Inside, Harrison appeared from the study, crouched to Noah's level with the careful precision of someone relearning how to interact with children. You must be Noah. You're Victoria's dad? I am. She says you're scary but nice underneath. Harrison's eyebrows rose. He glanced at Victoria, who shrugged. I told him the truth. Fair enough. Harrison returned attention to Noah. I understand you like dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs. Do you like dinosaurs? I don't know much about them. Noah's face lit up with the evangelical fervor of someone about to educate the uninformed. I can teach you. I know everything about dinosaurs. Well, everything in my books. There's probably more, but I'm only 5, so I haven't read all the books yet. The dinner that followed felt like watching ice thaw. Slow, gradual. Moments of warmth breaking through decades of frost. Noah charmed everyone by asking direct questions adults avoided. Why was the chandelier so shiny? Did rich people ever eat pizza? Could dinosaurs have been rich? The logic was impeccable, even when the conclusions made no sense. Over dessert chocolate, something that Noah attacked with focus, usually reserved for important missions. Victoria's hand found Marcus's under the table. He squeezed back. Margaret cleared her throat. Victoria, darling, I wanted to apologize. Properly. For all the years I pushed you toward what I thought you should want instead of asking what you actually wanted. For making you feel like a business asset instead of a beloved daughter. Her voice cracked slightly. And Marcus, I apologize to you as well. For judging you before knowing you. For letting my own fears and insecurities blind me to your character. Noah, chocolate forgotten, looked at Margaret with the gravity of a tiny judge. That's okay. Daddy says everyone makes mistakes. What matters is if you fix them. Out of the mouths of children. Wisdom delivered with chocolate on the corners. Margaret laughed, actually laughed, eyes bright with tears she didn't bother hiding. Your father is a wise man. I know. He's the best daddy ever. After dinner, Noah showed everyone his drawing folder, dinosaurs mostly, but also pictures of people, families. One in particular caught Margaret's attention, 5 figures holding hands. 2 tall, 1 small, 2 older. Is this us? Noah nodded enthusiastically. That's me and Daddy and Victoria and you and the scary but nice grandpa. Grandpa, Harrison repeated the word like learning a foreign language. I haven't been called that before. Is it okay, Victoria said, maybe I could call you that because we're kind of family now. Harrison looked at his daughter, at Marcus, at the small boy who'd walked into their complicated lives and somehow made them simpler through sheer existence. It's more than okay. Marcus drove them home at 10, Noah asleep in the back seat, clutching his folder. Victoria rode with them, claiming she wanted to make sure they got home safe, but really just wanting to extend the evening. At the apartment, they carried Noah inside together. He barely stirred when Marcus changed him into pajamas and tucked him in. Victoria stood in the doorway watching. He's incredible. He's everything. They retreated to the living room. Victoria sat on the pull-out couch that Marcus would unfold after she left. The apartment felt smaller with both of them in it, more intimate. 1 year ago, I was planning your ambush dinner. Marcus sat beside her, shoulders touching. Worst business decision I ever made. And the best life decision? That remains to be seen. Victoria laughed, reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope. I wanted to give you this. Inside a document. Legal letterhead. Their original agreement with Void stamped across every page in red ink. We don't need contracts anymore. What do we need? She turned to face him, fully at eyes holding everything they'd been building toward since that first impossible dinner. This, real. Whatever happens from here, it's because we choose it. Not because we're forced or desperate or trapped. Because we want it. Marcus kissed her. Soft, slow, tasting like possibility and promise. I want it. Me too. 6 months passed in a blur of learning how to be family. Marcus's new office occupied the executive floor with windows that actually showed sky instead of brick walls. His team expanded to 15 designers who respected him for work instead of resenting him for circumstance. The creative work that came from authentic vision instead of committee-approved safety won awards and clients and industry recognition. Victoria moved out of her sterile penthouse into a Brooklyn brownstone walking distance from Marcus. Decorated it herself with colors she chose and art she loved and furniture that prioritized comfort over appearance. Started therapy, learned who she was when nobody was watching, discovered she liked herself. Noah adjusted to changes with the resilience of children who trust that adults will figure things out. Victoria became a permanent fixture in his life, reading bedtime stories, helping with homework, learning about dinosaurs with the dedication she'd previously reserved for quarterly reports. The Sunday routine became sacred. Breakfast at Rosie's, park if weather allowed, dinner at Marcus's apartment or Victoria's brownstone. Noah shuttling between homes with the ease of someone who understood that family wasn't defined by single address. Margaret and Victoria rebuilt their relationship slowly. Coffee dates that became lunch dates that became real conversations about hurt and healing. Harrison learned to ask instead of command, to listen instead of lecture. Grandpa duties that felt awkward at first, but grew more natural. 1 year to the day after the ambush dinner, they returned to the townhouse. Same table, same dining room. But everything else transformed. Noah sat between Victoria and Marcus, explaining his latest dinosaur discovery with enthusiasm that made everyone smile. Margaret and Harrison listened without checking phones or calculating business angles. After dinner, Marcus and Victoria stepped into the garden. October air carried the same chill as a year before, but this time felt like promise instead of threat. 1 year ago, I walked into that house thinking it was a business meeting. Victoria leaned against him, comfortable in ways she'd never been with another human being. And I ambushed you into the worst plan ever conceived. Worked out, though. Did it? Marcus pulled the small box from his pocket, felt the weight of everything it represented. Not just commitment, but choice. Not just love, but partnership. Not just survival, but living. He didn't kneel, didn't need ceremony, just held the box between them and opened it. Simple ring, single stone, nothing ostentatious. Perfect. I know it's complicated. I know my son comes first and your family is a lot, and we're still figuring things out. But I also know that when I think about my future, you're in it. Always, so yes. I haven't asked yet. I don't care. Yes. Victoria's eyes were bright with tears that didn't fall. Marcus slipped the ring under her finger. It fit perfectly because he'd asked her mother about sizing, and Margaret had helped with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested she was making up for lost time. They kissed in the garden where a year ago everything had started falling apart and was only now falling into place. Inside, through the windows, they could see Noah showing Harrison something in his drawing folder. Margaret laughing at whatever Noah had said. Family built not from blood alone, but from choice and commitment and showing up even when easier to run. Marcus pulled back, kept his arms around Victoria, looked at this impossible woman who'd walked into his life disguised as disaster and turned out to be salvation. What do we tell Noah? The truth, that we're getting married, that we're choosing to be family officially instead of just practically. He's going to want a dinosaur-themed wedding. Obviously, I already have ideas about Brontosaurus centerpieces. Marcus laughed, actually laughed. The sound felt foreign and perfect simultaneously. They went back inside together. Noah looked up, saw their faces, knew immediately. Are you getting married? We are. Is that okay with you? Noah launched himself at both of them with enough force to nearly knock them over. Small arms wrapped around whatever he could reach, muffled voice against Marcus's chest. Finally, I've been waiting forever. It's been a year. That's forever when you're 5. Later, after goodbyes and promises to see everyone Sunday after the drive back to Marcus's apartment, where Noah fell asleep in the back seat again, after carrying his son inside and tucking him in with whispered prayers Marcus didn't believe in, but said anyway after Victoria left with Kiss, that promise tomorrow, Marcus stood alone in his small apartment. The pull-out couch, the cramped kitchen, the life he'd built from nothing because Noah needed breakfast and love, and someone to show him that broken things could be repaired. His phone buzzed. Victoria, I love you. Marcus typed back, I love you too. 3 words that a year ago would have been lies. Now were the truest thing he knew. Life wasn't measured by the height you climbed or the wealth you accumulated or the awards you won. It was measured by the people you lifted up alongside you, the hands you held, the family you chose, the moments that mattered more than comfort. Marcus looked at Noah's drawing on the refrigerator, 5 people holding hands. Family defined not by blood, but by choice, and felt something settle into place he hadn't realized was fractured. They'd made it, against odds and obstacles and every logical reason why it shouldn't work. They'd made it, and tomorrow they'd get up and do it all again. Together.